So I want to start by just giving you a sense of the lens through which I'm viewing this retail project. I'm comparatively new to the retail space, but I spent a long time looking at business location and the internet economy, and I've become very interested in internet use. And I think there are some interesting intersections if we think about problems that people might have with internet use and how this translates into hybrid bricks and mortar online strategies for small business survival. So I'll get into that in just a moment. Okay. I did want to think about, though, what's the trajectory of the retail market in the past, moving into the present, and then also I'll trace for you the development of online retail activity. And I think there's some interesting intersections that I'll talk about in a moment. 1999 is a big year. So we see the closing of big box stores and the declining popularity of malls are actually being revitalized to take on different types of use instead of retail space. A surge in popularity of online retailing. And a lot of big box retailers like Home Depot are going to this mixed strategy of online information, and then you can order online and pick it up in the store. I also think too, and this hasn't been brought up very much, that we see a rise in dual parent households and different uses of time, and so people feel much more pressured when it comes to time, and so they might not necessarily be taking these long shopping trips to retail spaces that they had previously. And so that's something that I think is playing into some of this online behavior that we're seeing. We're also seeing generational differences in consumer preferences if you compare baby boomers with millennial and Generation Z consumer preferences. And I think with respect to local businesses, there is some hope here in the sense that millennials and Generation Z are looking for more authentic, locally sourced, artisanal, sort of experiential products. So in terms of independent retailers, we know that they're anchors, and we heard a little bit from the alderman last night that they are anchors of local neighborhoods, particularly those of an ethnic variety. As I mentioned, I think they do appeal to millennials and Generation Zs in terms of their tastes and preferences when it comes to purchasing goods and services. But they do have a lack of online visibility compared to larger retailers. And I'll talk about some of the problems therein, and I'll ask you to suspend your disbelief about how you use the internet in a moment. And so my research question is, how can small retailers enhance their online visibility to pursue this hybrid bricks and mortar? So I don't think that these spaces are going to go away, but if we can enhance their online visibility, this might go a long way to driving traffic to their stores. And I do want to give Henry Rensky credit for this idea of bricks and clicks. So he came up with that little phrase at ACSP many years ago. So can't take credit for that. I'm not that clever. All right. So the evolution of retail. Indiana University has a Center for Education and Research, and so they have put together a timeline of retail historically, and they've also included some information about e-commerce. And so I think this is interesting just to get a sense of where e-commerce begins to kick in relative to what was happening in some of our more traditional retail outlets. So 1962, Sam Walton opens the first Walmart. In 1980, this is a phrase I learned recently, category killer stores like Toys R Us, Home Depot, and then Circuit City and Sam's Club. You see the rise of these sort of club stores that kind of sell everything, and we talked a lot about that, where you buy your 50-pack of toilet paper to stick in your minivan and take home. And then in 1990, we see the Mall of America opening, a sort of homage to retail, if you will, and all of its glorious thousands of square footage of space. All right. So in the 1990s, category killers at this point, according to this data source, make up about 1/3 of all retail revenues. And around the mid-1990s, we see the peak of malls in the United States at around 1,500 malls. And I have 1999 highlighted here in bold because this is when you see online sales for brick and mortar stores really kick up in terms of online activity. So in this year, online sales for brick and mortar businesses actually accounted for 59% of all online retail sales. And so when I talk about this mixed strategy moving forward, I think this is a key date to take note of. And then we start to see real evidence of the decline of big box stores. So in 2001, Sears closes a lot of stores. In 2002, Kmart files for bankruptcy. And then more recently, we're seeing a lot of stores with multiple closures. And I've just put in some store numbers there for you on JCPenney, Macy's, Radio Shack was tremendously bad, closing of 550 stores. That was a store from my youth, so that's sort of sad to see go. And then in 2018, we're starting to see this transition of repurposing of malls and MAR parking lots. And so I'm not an urban designer, but here's my nod to design here in terms of what's happening with mall parking lots and how they're transitioning them to different types of uses. Okay. So the rise of e-commerce, as these trends in bricks and mortar businesses are co-occurring with key dates in e-commerce activity. One of the key things was getting a web browser that could help people actually navigate online more easily. Before then, it was really only computer programmers and very, very tech-savvy people that could navigate the web. In 1995, Amazon, the, I guess, node of all online evil these days, sells its first book. And in 1998, eBay stock went public and had a very successful IPO. And so here you see 1999 again, as I put the same date on the timeline for bricks and mortar businesses and also more e-commerce oriented activity, because this is when things really start to pick up in terms of online retail sales. And by 2001, 70% of all people had made an internet purchase during the holiday season, and now we have things like Cyber Mondays and that sort of thing where online activity really is picking up. In 2008, Amazon launched its Kindle. And then in terms of what's going on more recently in terms of e-commerce, so e-commerce represented about 13% of total retail sales and 49%, so it accounts for a large percentage of the growth in retail sales. And this is data from the annual retail sales survey in the United States. Okay. So the U.S. Department of Commerce also has some information about e-commerce sales and what's happening there. And so you can see sort of this steady rise. And I do want to point out that these numbers are adjusted for retail activities that are viable online. So these numbers might be a little bit higher than if you look at information from the annual retail sales survey, because they've adjusted these numbers for to take out like gasoline stations, for example, that aren't really viable in terms of online strategy. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to move on to some thinking about what are some problems that independent retailers might have in pursuing this online bricks and mortar strategy. And I will ask you to suspend your own notions of how you use the internet, because we're, I would say, a very educated group that probably uses the internet quite well. But as we heard last night, people have some hangups about technology, whether that's credit cards or how do I even get online in terms of a website or some basic computer knowledge. And so I think it's important to keep this in mind when we think about some of the problems that smaller retailers are having in terms of pursuing this hybrid strategy. All right, so the North American Retail Hardware Association did a survey of 400 independent retailers, home improvement retailers, and here are some things that I think this shows conflicting evidence about what retailers think they should be putting, or the information that retailers should be putting online, and then what consumers want. And so this is a starting point in terms of why might websites not be successful. All right, so retailers think they should be providing basic information about their business, service offerings, products, and department offerings. And consumers really want information about product pricing, what's in the store, is a particular product in stock. They want the website to be really easy to use. They don't want to spend a lot of time getting lost online. And then they also really want reviews and recommendations. I've definitely noticed this with millennials that Yelp or that sort of thing, they don't really go and patronize a place without at least getting a scan of Yelp reviews or other reviews on products. All right, so one of the issues that we could be seeing as pursuing this hybrid strategy is a mismatch of how people are designing their websites and the type of information that they're putting on there, and then what consumers actually want from retail websites. Okay. In terms of some other challenges, and again, this is from the Retail Hardware Association, I'll present some information that I have from surveys of entrepreneurs that I did. But some issues in terms of pursuing an online strategy. Number one is manpower. So if you're a small business owner, time is of the essence. And so getting a website online, particularly if you're not computer savvy, and also keeping it up to date. I struggle with this. My own personal website, just keeping that up to date is a huge investment in time. They might not necessarily know how to set it up or what some easy strategies might be to set up a website, or they don't necessarily have the money to hire someone. With a star in the survey, those were people that were in fact in the process of actually rolling out a website. And then some people, a large percentage, and so there's a large or growing literature on non-adoption with respect to internet applications and broadband about why people just aren't necessarily interested in being online. And so we might place business owners as well that aren't simply interested in pursuing this type of strategy in that category as well. Okay. So my lens on this, I said, is from my prior work on broadband availability and how that impacts businesses, but I've become very interested in internet use. And when I was at Arizona State in Phoenix, I actually, with the help of a good graduate student, interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs in the area. And so I see some intersection between some of the problems that retailers are having and some of the same issues that these entrepreneurs indicated in terms of leveraging the power of online activity to really grow their businesses. So one of the things I thought was interesting from these interviews is a lot of entrepreneurs said, well, I just throw up a website to have an online presence, then I come back to it and revise it over time. But what they don't know is that when people visit a website and it's not very good the first time, they're not very likely to return later. So that could be a big issue right there. They're using all types of social media, but we don't really know, we have some idea of the age or the generations that are using particular types of social media, but in terms of other demographics and what that might help us understand about where to post particular types of information, or do you post for millennial social media applications, should you post more experiential type how-to videos that might draw them in? So in terms of what social media applications to use and then what information to post on different outlets. This is something that they're struggling with. And then also how to turn social media activity into sales. So it's easy for people to go online and like something, but what's going to be the next step to actually get them into the store? And so I think with these data that I have, there are some interesting intersections with the hardware survey and hopefully maybe the information that Vikas will be presenting later. All right, so this is going to be a controversial slide, and I actually would like to do some surveys of retailers just to see, are problems new? Do we see the same old song and dance that I mentioned previously? But so a new project that I'd like to propose for anyone that would like to participate with me is actually surveying retailers particularly to get better data on what some of their issues are with pursuing this hybrid strategy. And I was talking to my husband on the way here, and he said, well, why wouldn't they just get online and use Amazon? Like, they already have an e-commerce platform set up. This is something that you can easily leverage. And so I hope this is controversial, and I've saved it as my last slide. But here are some reasons why, if you're a small retailer, you might decide to go this route. You can actually have some control over your product quality and pricing. It doesn't change that. It's an easy way to get word out about your products using the millions of customers they already have. And the article I found suggests that there's a minimal initial investment. So if you want to do it on a transactional basis, it's about 99 cents per transaction. If you want to upgrade to the professional seller plan, it's about $40 a month. And this article I found and other people have suggested that it's a good test bed. If you're not sure that online activity is a way to go for your particular product or service offering, then this is a good way to test it out without investing a lot of upfront capital in e-commerce. So with that, I think I have plenty of time, but I'm going to end it there. All right.